right, we are going to be using something called DeMoivre's theorem. Notice here what we're asked to do is take the number for cosine 22 plus I sine 22 and raise it to the third power, which means if we did this by hand, we would have to write this out 3 times and multiply 3 times. Okay, that can get a bit tedious. Fortunately, we have a theorem, DeMoivre's theorem, and it tells us a bit of a shortcut for that. It says that if you have r cosine theta plus I sine theta raised to the nth power, that's equal to r to the nth power, so we take that number that's in front and raise it to our power that we're asked to find, times the cosine of n theta, so whatever power is, we take that times our angle, plus I sine n theta, same thing, take the power times the angle. So this would look this way. When we calculate it, we take the number in front and raise it to whatever power. It was the power of 3. Times the cosine of, we take our angle that we already had, times the power of 3. Plus I sine, same thing, 22 times 3. Now we're asked to round our answer to the nearest hundredth, which means we don't have exact values for this angle. 4 to the third power is 64, and then I have cosine 66 degrees plus I sine 66 degrees. Distribute the 64, we have 64 times the cosine of 66 plus 64 I sine 66. Just calculate that, so 64 times cosine of 66 degrees gives me 26.03 if I round to the nearest hundredth, plus I'm going to take 64 times the sine of 66 degrees, and I get 58.47 I. Okay. So there you have it. We have our answer rounded to the nearest hundredth, and that took a lot less time than writing this out 3 times and multiplying it. Okay, here is a very similar problem. The only change is that it's to the -3 power. And we're asked to round to the nearest thousandth this time, because remember, raising to a negative power is more like dividing. It inverts your number. So we are going to get fairly small answers here. We still follow the formula we're given with DeMoivre's theorem. We take our number in front, raised to the power we were given. So it would be 4 to the -3rd power. And we still take our angle times the power. So this time is 22 times -3 for both our sine and our cosine. Okay, well, 4 to the -3rd power is 1 over 64. It also has a decimal, but I'm going to use the exact value. If you've forgotten negative exponents, the -3rd power means 1 over 4 to the 3rd. And like we did on our last problem, 4 to the 3rd was 64. And the reason I'm using it this way is because that will mean less rounding and I'll get closer to the correct answer. So 4 to the -3rd is 1/64. If you put it in your calculator, it will give you the decimal, which is 0.015625. And we have cosine of -66 degrees plus I sine -66 degrees. We want to find our answer rounded, so we're going to go ahead and distribute the 1/64th, and that gives me cosine of -66 divided by 64 plus I sine -66 degrees divided by 64. So let's calculate here. So using my calculator, I'm doing cosine of -66 degrees, and I'm dividing it by 64. And I get 0.006. And here I take the sine of -66, which is -0.913, and I divide by 64. For that one I get negative 0.014, and don't forget your I. Okay, so our answer would be 0.006 or 6 thousandths minus 0.014 or 14 thousandths, is the way that's read, is our answer rounded to the nearest thousandth. Okay, let's do one more of those. This time we have it just with our abbreviation. Remember, this is just an abbreviation for the cosine of the angle. That's what the C stands for, plus I sine. I sine is the IS part of that, of our angle. And again, we're raising this to the 6th power. So rather than write this out 6 times and multiply it, which would take forever, we're going to use DeMoivre's theorem, which tells us to raise the number that's in front to that power. So that gives us 3 to the 6th power times the cosine of the angle we had times our power. So 285 times 6 plus I sine of that same thing, 285 times 6. Okay, well, 3 to the 6th power is 729. I'm multiplying that by 285 times 6 is 1,710. So the cosine of 1,710 plus I sine 1,710. If we distribute our 729, that gives us 729 cosine 1,710 plus 729I sine 1,710. And let's use our calculator now to calculate. 729 times the cosine of 1,710 is 0, because the cosine of this number is 0. 729 times the sine of 1,710 is negative 729, okay, because the sine of this angle is negative 1. And don't forget your I. So if 0 plus negative 729I, we would just write that as negative 729I.